It's important to note that the board is the focal point of governance in an organization, and that the board is ultimately accountable and responsible for the organization's performance and its affairs. The board plays a very interesting role in the organization, and this includes, firstly, establishing policies and procedures towards the effectiveness of the company so as to ensure smooth, efficient and prudent stewardship of the affairs of the company. Secondly, the board plays a role with respect to ensuring that appropriate governance structures exist throughout the organization, with proper levels of accountability, transparency, and responsibility within the structures and operations of the company in a manner that guides the observance of appropriate levels of supervision and reporting. Thirdly, the board plays a critical role in ensuring ethical behavior and compliance by the company with all relevant laws and regulations, audit and accounting principles, as well as ensuring the existence within the company of effective, efficient and transparent systems of financial and risk management, internal control, and a robust internal and external audit function. The board of directors has a complex role. Firstly, the board must simultaneously remain in prudent control of the organization and in the same vein be entrepreneurial. At the same time, the board has to be sufficiently knowledgeable about the organization to be accountable for its actions, yet the board is expected to stand back from day-to-day management. Corporate governance practices within an organization involves a number of key principles as advocated by the King Report. Firstly is the principle of separation of powers, to ensure that no individual has unfettered powers of decision making, and in this regard it provides different roles for the board, for the management, which is led by the Chief Executive Officer, for board committees as well as the company secretariat. The board has a role to play in terms of leadership, independence, provision of strategy and oversight, as well as providing integrity in terms of decision-making processes. The day-to-day running and administration of the corporation is usually vested in the hands of management, which is led by the Chief Executive Officer. The board committees usually have no executive authority, but are subcommittees of the board to facilitate the board's efficient decision-making processes and to enable the board have specialized attention to key focus areas. Also, the company secretariat, or the role of this company secretary, is very important in terms of guiding the organization in the area of corporate governance and supporting the board on governance issues. And usually you find that it's the company secretary or the company secretariat that convenes the annual general meetings. Another important corporate governance best practice, as advocated by the King Report, includes the processes for appointment of directors. King advocates for formal, transparent nomination procedure in terms of the appointment of directors. It advocates that the board should have a nominations committee that should handle each recruitment and appointment of board members. And it also advocates that directors must have defined responsibilities set out in their letter of appointment, etc. And the principle is that there should be transparent and predefined appointment and performance criteria to help contain conflicts of interest as well as to mainstream expectations. A key corporate governance best practice includes inducting and training directors properly with respect to the business of the organization, their competitive environment, performance criteria, etc. And this, it's important that the training process be an ongoing practice towards improving accountability and setting the right tone at the top within the company. King advocates that the board be composed predominantly of non-executive directors in order to ensure objectivity in terms of decision making. It makes a distinction between executive, non-executive and independent directors and indicates that the majority of directors on the board should be sufficiently independent of the corporation. It indicates also that the board ideally should be led by a non-executive chairperson who is distinct from the CEO, or even in an instance where the majority of the board members be non-executive directors and be independent. It's also important to periodically evaluate performance of the board as well as key functionaries within the organization, such as the chairperson, the chief executive officer, also the relationship between management and the board. And this is important to test that the board as well as these key functionaries are effective and achieving their objectives in terms of identifying growth areas and raising the governance bar. Key steps for demonstrating commitment to mainstreaming corporate governance includes the following. Firstly, it's important for the board to show leadership and set the tone at the top. Second, it's important to develop an implementation plan to evaluate the corporate governance environment and identify where the growth areas are. Also key is planning and obtaining buy-in for a change program. Fourthly, it's important to assign clear lines of responsibility and accountability in terms of implementing this plan. And it's important also to formalize your corporate governance policies and procedures, and this could include corporate governance code, board and committee charters, bylaws and disclosures, dividends, etc. It is important to mention that no one organization has a 100% perfect corporate governance environment. It is important to emphasize that corporate governance requires a progressive approach from moving from acceptable levels of corporate governance to best practice. Well, we hope that you have enjoyed this session on corporate governance. Thank you very much.